Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. You're about to watch an interview we did with Jeff Sherman, VP of Risk Management and Golf Line Creator at the SuperBook out in Las Vegas. Jeff has been in the industry for years. He's considered a golf expert. And Moose and I sat down with him to talk about his predictions for the Players' Championship this week, a peek behind the curtains on how he creates golf odds and what we should look for both in the outrights and head-to-head markets, who the sharp bettors like this week, and how we as DFS players can identify sharp action to make plays for our DFS lineups. I think you'll enjoy it a lot. Before you watch it, do us a favor, click that subscribe button and like button below. Subscribing will get you notified whenever we release any video here on YouTube. We'll also be doing a live stream tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern with Niramata, breaking down all the top plays, picks, and lineup strategies for the Players' Championship. Enjoy. All right, so let's bring in our guest for today, very special guest. We're joined today by the VP of Risk Management. He's a golf odds maker, owner of golfodds.com. You can find him on Twitter at golfodds. Mr. Jeff Sherman. Welcome, sir. Thanks for taking time out of your day to talk with us.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
You know, Jeff, I got to say, someone in your position in this industry, you don't last as long as you do without being good at your job. So for the people out there listening, can you tell us a little bit about your role at the SuperBook and your background?
Well, I broke into the business in 1993 after graduating from UC Santa Barbara. I started out at the Imperial Palace with Jay Cornegay and Ed Salmons, who I'm over here at the SuperBook with now. But I did have some time where I went to a couple other places. I helped open the Palms up early 2000s. But we got back together here when it was a Las Vegas Hilton in 2004. And we've been here, and it's transformed into the SuperBook. And so it's going on 17 years here at this property. And as far as golf goes, back at the Imperial Palace, Jay and a couple of other guys showed me how they did the golf odds back then, and I learned that method and tried to expand it over the years. And it's really been blowing up, especially in the last few years with the proliferation of sports wagering across the country. So many more wagering options, and we have to keep evolving with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy to hear all the names and the different places you've been and being in the industry for so long. So we did want to talk to you about the Players' Championship and maybe get a little bit of a peek behind the curtain because a lot of people out there are always curious about the other side of the counter and how lines are made and what goes into that process. So I was hoping to ask you, without giving away your secret sauce, how do you create lines for a major golf tournament? Is it more math and model based, or how much of a gut feel slash what you expect, where you expect the money to come in at for a specific tournament?
It's a combination, and I use the same method for a weekly tournament, a major. But basically, I'll give you a weekly instance. The field is published by PGAtour.com at 2 p.m. Pacific on Fridays around that time. And so I'll take that list of golfers, and I'll run through it and do some preliminary odds, ranking them in different categories, A, B, C type of golfers. Then I'll go ahead and look at the course form and the current form stats, which I have a database of that. And I'll go ahead and solidify the numbers, and then we wait till the previous week's tournament concludes on the Sunday to kind of finalize the current form and put out the numbers for the weekly event on the Monday of that week. But a lot of it's course form, current form, and then we'll get a little bit more intricate if there's specialties to the course, and if there's golfers that greens in regulation means more that week, scrambling, putting, things like that. But it's pretty easy format to start out with and compile the odds. And from the odds standpoint, a lot of that part's feel. And I start out with just numbers that I think everyone should be in relation to the field and how I think the perceived action is going to come in.
Awesome. That sounds really interesting. And then about matchups, I know I was looking on the app beforehand. You have a bunch of matchups. Does that kind of creation and management process differ for matchups, or is it still kind of the same course and a little bit of feel?
It's actually completely different. The outrights and the matchups are two completely different markets. And generally in the outright markets, you'll get 95% general public play and very little sharp play. But in the matchups, it's converse of that, where you get about 95% sharp play and very little public play. So when we're setting the matchups, might not necessarily see a guy that's 25-1 favored over a guy 30-1. We could have the 30-1 golfer favored over the 25-1 golfer. And you can see that, for instance, this week at the Players Championship. Generally on the outright market, Dustin Johnson is the favorite to win the tournament. But in the matchup market, John Rahm is favored over Dustin Johnson. And the Sharps think that John Rahm is the number one power rated golfer in the field this week. So you can get a more true indication of the strength and the power rating of the golfers by looking at the matchups rather than the outrights, because the outrights are set for a lot of general public money that comes in at the long odds where your liability can add up quickly.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. It's really interesting to hear about how the Sharps handle the matchups. And then I wanted to ask you about the action and the handle. Now, where does the golf major like the Players Championship fit in at the SuperBook compared to other action? Like, how does the handle compare to either smaller golf events or some of the other big sports that are going on now?
Well, in relation to, as far as a golf perspective, this is basically the 5th largest handle of the year behind the 4 other majors, and it'll place ahead of the WGC events. And in relation to a weekly event, it's probably about 4 to 5 times what we do on an average weekly event. It's a little more difficult to quantify against some of the other sports right now. We're in college basketball conference tournaments, and that'll outdo what we do on the golf, tenfold. So, but in relation to the other golf tournaments, it's definitely the 5th largest we'll do during the season.
That makes a lot of sense. People want to get their money down during the majors. And Jeff, you mentioned about the sharp bettors and them flocking to the matchups. I wanted to get some information on who the Sharps are liking for this particular event. Now, you mentioned John Rahm. They have as their number one power rated golfer for this event. Who else do they like for this event? And then I also have a follow-up question for you. Not sure how much you can answer this one, but for sharp golf bettors, are they mostly, at least the ones that you're dealing with, are they mostly just math model guys who are hammering numbers, or do we have some groups or some guys who have eyes and ears on the ground and know how a golfer is feeling in a certain week?
Well, the first question is who they're looking at. Like you mentioned, Rahm. We're seeing a lot of support for Sergio Garcia this week. They took him at 100-1 and even 80-1 and played him in his matchup. I have him listed against Francesco Molinari, and we've taken some Garcia money there. So Garcia is a hot commodity this week. I just took a sharp play in the outright market on Tyrrell Hatton at 35-1. And so he's down to 25-1 now. And as far as how they handicap, a lot of them do use math models and use their inputs and get their data in relation to what the market is and find the value that way. But you also do have people that, are connected to people on tour and get some information, how a guy's playing, if, he's a little bit nicked up, somebody saying that their game is out of sorts. So it's a combination, but I'd say more so based on deriving their math models.
Right. And a lot of times if you follow the line moves throughout the week, you'll see you can probably tell which ones are the math moves. And then every now and then you'll see a move, at least from an outsider's perspective, we'll see a move and be like, this guy has been playing poorly. There must be some information out there that someone has that this golfer is going to get his head right this week. And oftentimes more than not, it's right. And as a follow-up question to this, right, most of the people listening to this show are daily fantasy sports players. So we don't necessarily care about the numbers. We're not trying to beat specific numbers and get the best lines. We're just trying to identify the golfers that are going to do well in a specific week. So do you have any advice for daily fantasy sports players out there who are just following the markets, reading different material sources? How can we identify which ones are the sharp plays, who are going to be the good plays for a week if we can?
Well, my first indication is I would follow the betting markets and see who is favored in the matchups and derive it from there. Because like I said, they don't correlate to the outright markets. And that's what I always suggest is you can derive some information from that perspective. But the one thing, especially from a fantasy perspective, I look for is consistency amongst golfers. I don't like getting involved with inconsistent golfers, guys that can go from first to miscut back to third, things like that. So if you can find consistency and just give yourself a chance come Sunday, right now, a guy like Patrick Cantley, Tony Finau, Finau's a little bit down on the odds list, 25-30-1, but he's consistent. He doesn't win, but he's consistent near the top. And another guy that I'm expecting to do well this week that I wouldn't put any money on the outright market, he just doesn't win enough, but Hideki Matsuyama. And he started out last year before he got canceled with a 63 here. And I think he might be rounding into form. He started out poorly this year, but last week had a nice showing. So he's going to a course he's had some success. And I think he could be a guy that from either a fantasy perspective or even a matchup wager perspective, he might be a guy to look for.
That's interesting. And actually, I do have one more. I keep saying follow-up question, but I do have one more follow-up question because you did mention Hideki's number here last year in the first round before they stopped play. And this is just, if I'm not mistaken, the second year they moved this tournament earlier in the year. Does that have any effect on your number making as far as the time of the year that it's played and how the course may play given the weather conditions?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. You know, we do a winning score and a cut score and lowest round shot, and we're expecting the course to play easier this time around. And so I adjusted that downward, and we've even seen some under money on all three of those options. So the public doesn't think that I made enough of an adjustment, but we definitely took that into account, and we're expecting easier course play this year at this time.
Awesome. And then we talked about some of the sharp bettors, but Jeff, who do you like? I know you're definitely a very sharp person. You're the one that makes the lines. Do you have any predictions for the event that you like?
Well, like I said, I'm backing a Hideki Matsuyama this week. I'm looking for some matchups, and I'll look through and see what kind of options I have today. And Emiliano Grillo, he's a guy that he started out 200-1. He's in the 125-1 range. I played him at 175-1. But I'm going to look to play him in a top 20 market. And I think Chris Kirk, the way he's been playing well too, I think he's got a decent chance to make the cut. You can find that around Pick'em. So I'm looking at some various markets to be involved with this week, and those are three guys.
Love to hear that, and especially for us daily fantasy sports players, both Grillo and Kirk are super cheap options that can, if they can make the cut, certainly add value to your DFS lineup. So. All right, Jeff, we'll let you get out of here shortly. I did have one final topic to talk with you about as the SuperBook's expanding, and it has expanded beyond its known location in Las Vegas. You guys have an app in Colorado now. So I wanted to hear your expectations for the SuperBook brand beyond how everyone knows it in Las Vegas.
Yeah, well, we're on a different operating system in Colorado, so it gives us the ability to offer things there that we don't offer here, and especially for golf. Our operating system in Nevada, you don't find top 5, top 10, top 20 markets out here in Las Vegas. But I do have that this week in Colorado. That's something that new we're getting involved with because we have the ability to do it now. So we have a lot more features that we can do from a golf perspective, and we're always going to look to grow that aspect. We want to get involved in daily outright markets over there too. And we're lagging a little bit behind in Las Vegas with that. So it gives us a fresh start and the ability to do even more than we're doing here. So we're looking forward to that.
That's amazing to hear. Obviously, we love the SuperBook brand, and we can't wait to see it expand to other states. You guys, I imagine you have some ideas in mind into getting into more states beyond Colorado, right?
Yeah, and we're anticipating being in New Jersey shortly. So there's no specific time frame, but hopefully the next few months, and then we'll look beyond that. So we've got Colorado outside Nevada, hopefully New Jersey soon, and then expanding further from there.
Awesome. Can't wait to see it. Love to see the SuperBook brand expanding. So guys, if you liked what you heard today, you can follow Jeff on Twitter at Golf Odds. You can follow the SuperBook at SuperBook Sports. Jeff, any final thoughts for the tournament or golf in general?
Well, you know, you're going to find some nice prices this week because it's a deep and strong field, better than what you see in some of the majors. So with Dustin Johnson, I just bumped him up to 13-1. Generally, you're not going to find him for majors at those prices. So there's very attractive prices this week and a lot of golfers. So you can spread your action throughout and have a good week with it.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, we appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule during a major week to come chat with us. And again, you can follow Jeff on Twitter at Golf Odds. So for Jeff, I'm Brian and Moose. Thanks everyone for listening, and good luck this week in the Players Championship.